Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Darius circled the spoon around the plate. For about 5 minutes, Anthony patiently watched his daughter. But even her strong nerves eventually gave way. "Daria, what fly bit you this morning?" The girl rolled her eyes theatrically. "Dad, there's no fly in our house that can stand it. They all die of boredom on the fly." Anthony carefully pushed the empty plate away. "Watch her tongue. It's out of control lately, and you sound like a street junkie. I don't like it." The man paced the long tables, casting meaningful glances at the 12-year-old provocateur, without so much as twitching an eyebrow. After waiting a few seconds, he said defiantly, "I love this crypt-like house. I'm also sick of this mess. How many times have I asked you to tell Kathy to cook something else?" The housekeeper stood mute beside her master. After the girl's words, she shuddered as if electrical wires had been connected to her. Anthony stood up abruptly. "Daria, as long as you live in this house, you will eat and drink what they give you. You're not old enough. You're not old enough to change things." "Understood." Daria looked at her father and muttered, "Understood." An oppressive silence hung over the dining room. The girl became defiantly apprehensive. She ate her porridge, but in her mind she was calculating how long it would take her father to travel the distance from one end, from the table to the other. The results of the mathematical calculations were disappointing, and Daria decided not to be angry anymore. Noticing that his daughter had relented, Anthony sat back down. "Kathy, you can pour the coffee." The housekeeper hurried to the kitchen and returned immediately with a tray. Also speechless, she placed a cup with a steaming beverage and a miniature creamer in front of him. "And coffee for me." Daria's voice sounded already indulgent. The man's pulse trembled, but he didn't fall for his daughter's ploy and said sternly, "Kathy will prepare the cocoa when you've had your porridge. Caffeine is bad for you at your age, and by the way, you should despise this porridge so much. Even the royal family traditionally serves this dish in the morning." Daria snorts at Dad. Anyone would think he had breakfast at Buckingham Palace. The man's heavy masculine fist lands on the natural oak tabletop. "Daria, what's with the language? I don't understand your intolerable behavior. Will you be punished today?" Anthony turned to the housekeeper. "Kathy, make sure this young lady doesn't run off anywhere." The housekeeper went back out of the country and looked at the master in a servile manner. "All right, I'm watching. Let's give her a good thrashing today. I think a strict regimen will do my daughter good. She's getting a bit temperamental." Anthony came out of the huge dining room, and soon his energetic footsteps echoed ominously throughout the house. Daria wanted to burst into tears, but struggled to hold back the tears. "What is it like for you to carry?" "Kathy," she bowed in a curtsy. Her whole appearance spoke of being ready to carry out any order, and this irritated the teenager more than anything else. The girl stood up and kicked a chair with her foot. "I don't want anything else. And stay out of my way. Leave me alone." Daria didn't hold back after all. Tears burst the dam of patience. She ran to the second floor to lock herself in her room. Executive Kathy tried to catch up with her. "Daria, wait. You know your father doesn't like to be contradicted, right? If I don't follow his instructions, he'll fire me." The girl stopped in front of her room and raised her hands, imitating the fanfare. She acted in triumph. "Then it will be the happiest day of my life. Kathy, you bore me to tears. How's the oatmeal? It's as bland as you are." The door slammed in Kathy's face, and soon the sounds of music came from the landlord's daughter's room. Kathy jiggled the doorknob and, faintly audibly, let out a small snake, just like her late mother. Kathy worked as a housekeeper at Anthony's house. For almost 10 years, her teaching career didn't take off right away. After graduating from college, she got a job in an elite gymnasium, where in her first month of work, the young teacher had a conflict with the students of the class. She was only 22 years old at the time, and the student, whose last name she could not remember, was only 16. The boy was insolent to the point of indignation, and he turned every lesson into an enthusiastic spectacle. Kathy tolerated the young bullies, hoping that they would soon tire of this kind of entertainment. But the boy could not calm down. One day he went to the extreme And when the teacher invited him to the blackboard, the boy gritted his teeth in her arms, saying, "Honey, let me give my lesson. I assure you, you'll love it." The class burst into hysterical laughter, and the young teacher burned with embarrassment. The defensive reaction worked spontaneously, and as soon as he freed himself from the embrace of the weeds, he gave her a resounding slap. The same day of the rematch, the principal invited Kathy into his office and immediately started yelling at her. "Kathy, what do you allow yourself? To use your fists in our gym? This is unacceptable. What was I supposed to do?" This young scumbag started using her hands in front of the entire class. The principal looked at the young teacher with contempt. "Do you expect me to believe you? Well, it doesn't matter anymore. We don't need that kind of staff. Do you even know who the father of the boy you beat up is?" Kathy shouted that I didn't hit him. I just slapped him. The principal frowned. "I don't think arguments are appropriate in this situation. File a complaint." Kathy had no choice, so she wrote a statement in her office. The graduate of a prestigious university, who was interning in the UK, hoped to get a job quickly. For 3 months, she went to schools, nurseries, and other institutions where her skills could be useful. But everywhere she was turned down. Desperate to find work, she made an appointment with the mayor. When the aide asked her why she was visiting the mayor, she lied. "I love our city very much, but it is not up to par with the regional centers in many respects." The mayor's aide didn't even hear the end of it, and he is right. "I would like more comfort and cleanliness." Kathy was pleased, but she noticed. "And that is easily accomplished by involving the youth." "That's a great idea. I think our mayor will appreciate your initiative, but the problem is that he's on vacation, so I'll refer you to the deputy mayor." But as soon as the visitor entered the official's office, her courage instantly vanished. The girl burst into tears. Anthony didn't understand what was wrong with her. "Calm down, and tell me, what was the problem you were trembling about?" stammered Kathy. "Please help me a little more, and I will simply starve to death because I have no means of subsistence." The deputy mayor shrugged her shoulders in confusion. "Young lady, don't talk nonsense. There are many vacancies in our city." "What are your studies, Kathy?" She took her documents out of her purse. The official opened the diploma, then the workbook, and smiled. "Yes, you have, to put it bluntly, an impressive record. Only 1 month. Tell me why you left the gym." "Kathy, did you tell this man everything in confidence?" Anthony wrote something in his diary and told her to come back the next day. Kathy showed up at the reception desk at the town hall at the appointed time, but Anthony told her not to. "Unfortunately, I still have nothing to tell you. The father of the pupil you had the incident with has blown the story wide open. That's why no school in the city wants to see such a troubled specialist." Kathy didn't take anything home. She was eager to leave this world as she saw no way out of the situation. But the girl did not have time to fulfill her plan, because just a couple of hours after her visit to the mayor's office, Anthony himself called her. "Kathy, considering your difficult situation, I can offer you a job as a governess for a while. My wife is seriously ill and we have a young daughter. Of course, it's not exactly a prestigious job, but at least you'll be able to earn a living." Kathy accepted immediately. At that time, her situation was really disastrous, and she forgot about her ambitions. My wife Adriana welcomed her warmly, although my husband and I had not planned to hire staff, but circumstances made us reconsider that decision. We will soon be moving to a new house, so I need a responsible helper. I hope we can be friends. The landlady had a pleasant timbre to her voice, and that lowered Kathy's guard a bit. But when Adriana looked at the girl, she couldn't help but think how unpleasant his wife's gaze was. It was then that she thought for the first time that she was not likely to find common ground with that woman. Kathy's intuition did not fail. Adriana, during her husband's absence, most of the day the landlady was absent from work. She invented for the housekeeper the most sophisticated abuses. But Kathy tolerated everything because she had nowhere to go, since she had no relatives. A great aunt said to her after school, "Dear niece, I've been dragging you around. How long can you manage on your own now? I'm still a young woman, and I want to make my own life in these square meters. Do you realize that? It's impossible to realize. My aunt had a 1-bedroom apartment, and for several years Kathy lived in the kitchen. After graduating from college, the girl never visited her relative, although Aunt Miranda lived nearby. Once settled in the gymnasium, she immediately rented a room, hoping to settle down in her personal life. But these plans were not destined to come true. So working at Anthony's house eliminated a number of problems. And Kathy was very afraid of losing this place. For many years, she tolerated the nagging mistress and did not notice how she became a silent creature, ready to fulfill any whim of her mistress at the push of a button. Adriana, and she was clearly melting before his eyes, and her condition was deteriorating rapidly every day. She was suffering greatly, taking out her irritation on the housekeeper and her young daughter. So when the housekeeper went to the next world one nameless autumn day, Kathy breathed a sigh of relief. From then on, she felt more at home in her employer's house. But if Anthony was happy with this state of affairs, his reckless daughter was unwilling to accept these rules. And the older Doria got, the more difficult it became to accommodate the governess. Vanessa went to work as if it were a vacation, and she tried to show up early at her favorite school. The mayor's assistant's punctuality was legendary. It further enhanced the self-esteem of the woman, who was not distinguished by her outward attractiveness. Vanessa's main asset was her business qualities, and the mayor once jokingly confessed that without Vanessa he would be lost. She is my light in the dark realm of bureaucracy. These words were spoken to Anthony in a small circle of friends many years ago, but they became faithful for the young woman, to whom the male sex paid little or no attention. Every morning she would wake up and mentally repeat "Nellie, hurry up," or "the boss without you will be lost." At first, this phrase was taken with humor. Over the years, it became a motto. By repeating these words, Vanessa gained confidence in her exceptionality. She did not hesitate to point out her mistakes to the boss. She could suggest the right decision. Vanessa was never wrong in her forecasts, so the mayor often consulted her on various matters. Thus, imperceptibly for her and for others, Vanessa gained universal respect. She was never called a secretary, and proudly wore this honorable title of the mayor's assistant. Of course, like any ambitious person, Vanessa wanted more. And when Anthony was widowed, she began to nurture the dream of becoming his wife. Of course, the boss was unaware of his right-hand man's secret plans, but Vanessa, with her usual diligence, worked in that direction. She was almost certain that she would achieve her goal. The only stumbling block was the boss's daughter. The girl immediately disliked her father's assistant. This little beast could read the thoughts of others from a distance. Vanessa tried several times to befriend Doria, but all attempts ended in complete failure. Then the woman went on the sly and began to give the boss's daughter small gifts in the form of charms and cosmetics and other trinkets. Doria easily understood this maneuver Vanessa, and in front of his father, told the aunt, "If you want to buy me, you are trying in vain. It's a pile of junk. Don't waste it. Spend your modest salary." Although the girl's words hurt Vanessa's ego, she didn't even blink, but she threw the ball into the goal with her opponent. Doria, what comes from the heart cannot be measured with money. But unfortunately, young people like you have a somewhat distorted perception of reality and are oriented towards other values. Doria didn't quite know what she was talking about. She felt it was her duty to resist his influence. But suddenly Anthony supported his assistant. "You're absolutely right, Vanessa. My daughter has been talking a lot of nonsense lately, and I often have to blush for her. So please don't be offended." Without realizing it, Doria had helped the woman who was struggling to take her mother's place. Vanessa sighed and shifted into the work groove. She was watering the flowers when Anthony burst into the reception area. Vanessa could tell by the boss's smoldering look that he was in a bad mood today. She instantly wiped the smile off her face and, in an emphasized official tone, told Anthony, "Today you have a conference call with your supervisors at 9:30, and at 11 you are to call the governor." Anthony let out a short one. "I know that, but thanks for reminding me." He strode confidently into the office, returning immediately to the reception desk. "Vanessa, if you don't mind, prepare a report on the work with large and low-income families, orphans, and other people in need of social support until tonight. But don't go into details, just generalities. Okay, Anthony, I'll do what I can. The mayor's eyes grew warm. Thank you, Vanessa. I don't know what I'd do without you. The woman's heart fluttered. Happiness after the chief's encouraging words and pleasant thoughts flowed back in a measured stream. I would do anything to make you happy. You have no idea what a woman in love can do. Anthony had long since forgotten about earthly affairs. Every day he had to deal with the important problems of the city. Therefore, that day he had no time to be distracted. The mayor's plans also went awry. When the governor called shortly after the conference call, "Listen, Anthony, are you planning to open a children's art center?" Anthony thought someone had already told him. But out loud, he cheerfully replied, "Yes, Stephen. But we haven't decided on a date yet. So you decide you're taking the cake. What's the reason for the delay? You know the objects of social importance we have in the first place." Stephen's displeasure was felt even from a distance. Anthony tried to say something, but the governor kept denouncing him for sloppiness, indifference, and other sins. "What are you doing in the governor's chair? Right, tidying up your city. And tidying up yours. This damn center was supposed to be finished in the spring, and it's already summer. What's the problem? The girls can't handle it, so whip them or give them a ruble. I don't care. Anyway, I'll give you exactly 1 week to fix the flaws. I hope you haven't forgotten that City Day is coming up." "I haven't forgotten, Stephen." "Well, that's good. The opening of the center is in preparation for the event. Invite the big-name guests, invite the sponsors. Not a bad idea to involve your family. It will be homey, warm, and touching. I promise I'll send a TV crew. And I'll probably be there myself." Stephen was famously tough, and Anthony knew perfectly well that his wish should be taken as an order. Inwardly, he muttered, "I don't have enough to worry about without this center. Now I will have to take personal control of this facility." The reconstruction of the old gymnasium had long been on the city's agenda. On several occasions, the old building was first to be converted into sewing workshops, so local businessmen had their eye on it. But 5 years ago, Anthony's predecessor said, "This is where the kids are going to be." That's right, because the building was built a century and a half ago with donations from the townspeople. And we must continue the tradition of our ancestors. And it will be symbolic. This idea of the former mayor had the support of the higher echelons. Even a fundraiser was organized for the reconstruction of the old gymnasium. But as often happens in our country actively started the case, it soon faded. After talking with the governor, Anthony called his assistant. "Vanessa, I have a personal request for you to work with our local businessman. It is urgent." Vanessa immediately realized that this was a hot case. "Why the rarity?" insisted Stephen. Anthony sighed heavily. "No, he didn't. It rolled over me like a rolling pin. But there's no way out. We have to follow orders. So, a week from today, we have the grand opening of the Children's Art Center. The governor wants everything to be top-notch. I can't wait to do it." The aide said with confidence that we will do it, Anthony. "Is this the first time we've been interrupted?" The mayor looked at the Vanessa woman with gratitude. "You are a true friend and comrade in arms." Second compliment. Just for one morning, Vanessa, after such a powerful impulse, was ready to roll mountains. She immediately pulled the secret list out of her desk drawer and began calling potential sponsors for the upcoming event. The mayor admired his assistant for a few more minutes. For the first time in his head, a brief flash and blinked a thought. With such an enterprising woman, no difficulties are not terrible. But this thought quickly fled. It has not settled in the man's memory. Anthony returned home late. Although he was very tired after a hard day's work, but his mood was on the rise. He had time to visit the place that had so interested the governor. Contrary to expectations, the work there was quite active, and when the mayor told the foreman that it was necessary to finish the work in just 1 week, the foreman replied cheerfully, "Don't worry, we'll manage." As usual, the owner was greeted at the entrance by Kathy. Anthony cast a fleeting glance and thought of 2 women about the same age and so different. Vanessa is confident to the point of insolence, and this one looks like a marketable fish. She's afraid to say a word. The man looked back at the housekeeper. "Kathy, go get Daria. I'll be in my office." The daughter was not long in arriving. She breezed into her father's office. Dad, Daria's belly called to me as her careless, smiling expression was a challenge to everything around her. But Anthony decided to ignore his daughter's antics. Gently, even with homely warmth, he asked Daria what she was willing to do for her friend. The girl clearly wasn't expecting such a question. Dad, you're doing fine. The man smiled. Do I look like an abnormal person? No, you don't, but you ask very strange questions about friendship. Daria sat on the back of the chair and hugged her father. Dad, you won't believe this, but I don't have any friends I can go to the fire and water with. At school, everyone acts like I'm the mayor's daughter. Even the teachers get angry in front of me. Honestly, I'm sick of it all. I wish I had a sister or a brother. Anthony hadn't expected such a frank confession. He kissed his daughter gently on the forehead. You and I are more or less in the same situation. In front of me, many subordinates also ingratiate themselves. It's true that not all of them are very self-confident people, ready at any moment to come to the rescue. They are the kind of people I usually trust. Daria smiled. You, Vanessa. That aunt has other plans for you. I've seen her eye on you. I'm sure she wants to marry you. Daria, if you keep knocking your teeth out like that, you'll soon have to get dentures. And it's a little early for you to be talking about grown-up things. The girl sighed in relief, and the father continued, okay, a little joke. Let's get down to business. The Children's Center is opening in a week, and I want you to help me. Daria glared at her father in surprise. What do I have to do? It's nothing complicated. You have to give a touching little speech. You're a smart girl, and I'm sure you can do it. You'll talk about family, friends, and helping each other. I think it's a personal mission from the governor for you. He even promised to send television crews. Daria paced around the office. And what did he prod his father with? Our people will die of envy. When they put me on TV, I'll do it. I just need the right outfit. The what? Anthony looked at his daughter in surprise, but after a second he slapped his forehead with the palm of his hand. I get it. You mean a suit? Well, yes, you could wear a classic dress. You know, something austere so everyone would think she was a good girl and a model student. Anthony didn't think his 12-year-old daughter could reason like an adult. Daria, you put everything in place. Now all that's left is to prepare for the event. Dad, why do I have to rack my brains? I'll tell Kathy. She'll help me with the speech. Or would you rather tell her? Daria smiled and disappeared out the door. Anthony thought wistfully how quickly his daughter had grown up. A very independent girl making her own important decisions. When his daughter left, the man invited Kathy in. He briefly explained what was required of her. The young girl felt embarrassed because it was the first time in 10 years that she received such unusual tasks from her master. Anthony, I don't even know what to say. I don't want to let you down, but I'm afraid I can't do it. I've forgotten everything I learned at the university. Anthony got angry. Is it so hard to find a suitable dress for a girl and write 2-3 sentences? Why do you always doubt everything? You need to be a little more confident, and sometimes it's good to take the initiative. Kathy nodded her head a couple of times, and the shadow slipped out of the study into her room, where she was crying from overwhelming anguish. Despair. The master is right about everything. I am like an amoeba. I do not live, but I exist. I can't go on living like this. Such impulses often occurred in Kathy Leonidovna's modest life, but she ruthlessly extinguished them because she was too afraid to change anything in her life. After all, it is much more comfortable to go with the flow than to resist it. Another city day went by in style. Residents were amazed by the magnitude of the party. In a small provincial town, several themed areas were deployed where children and adults could have a great time relaxing. For example, in the park a dance floor was organized for the older ones, where couples danced to the sound of a brass band. The younger ones had fun on the rides, and music lovers enjoyed the work of visiting artists. But the real highlight of the program was the long-awaited inauguration of the Children's Art Center. The governor himself came to town to say a few words. My friends, dear compatriots, you know that every talent has its origin in the homeland. And I am sure that the opening of the center will reveal new talents in the future. We do not yet know their names, but they will undoubtedly glorify this land. That is why I hand over the symbolic key of the new center to the representative of the young generation of our beautiful city." The square erupted in applause, and Daria proudly took the stage. Cameras clicked from all sides, but she only looked towards the place where the cameraman of the regional television studio was working. The girl gracefully raised beautiful foam keys on her outstretched arms, and without hesitation, delivered her speech. "I am glad to have had the honor of inaugurating the Magic House. They say that each person from birth receives a gift, and for this gift to become a real talent, it takes a lot of work. Therefore, a master jeweler strikes a diamond, and experienced masters light up in the sky small stars of talent. And that these stars in our city will be more." Sounded solemn fanfare and decorated with balloons. The huge doors of the renovated building opened, causing great delight among the audience. Daria handed the keys to the director of the Cultural Center and finished her colorful speech. "They also say that all children's dreams come true someday, and I would like to wish all children on behalf of myself and the city authorities. Don't be afraid to dream." The audience applauded Daria, and this was her moment of glory. As soon as she stepped off the stage, she was immediately surrounded by her peers and acquaintances. "Daria, you're great. I'm so happy for you. You made a great speech. When are you going to be on TV?" It was an obligatory question, and the girl answered confused. "I don't know, they didn't tell me anything." She wanted to ask Kathy, who was by her side during the whole ceremony, but the governess disappeared somewhere. On the stage, the action continued, and according to the script, the godparents were now presenting gifts to the newly inaugurated center. They also spoke words of farewell, and the audience applauded actively. Suddenly, Daria felt dizzy and began to push her way through the crowd. She thought with annoyance, "Kathy, you stupid chicken. How could she abandon me? It's okay, I won't complain about her to Daddy, and he'll give her a good life with pictures." The girl went to the central square of the town. There too, lively music was playing and people were strolling leisurely through the shopping streets. Nearby, Daria heard a familiar voice. She turned around and was almost stunned by the surprise. Kathy was walking next to the governor and chatting sweetly with an unknown man. The girl wanted to tell the housekeeper everything she was thinking, but he was looking at her so expressively that she forgot all the words. But the most surprising thing was that Kathy spoke to the strange man in German. And she did it with such ease and fluency, as if she had not been born in this city, but somewhere not far from Berlin. They walked past, confused. Daria's mood disappeared immediately. Everyone around her was amused, but she wanted to cry with resentment. She muttered to herself in despair. "Dad is somewhere entertaining guests. He's a mummy. Kathy has found her own amusement too. I wonder who the guy is with whom she was having such a pleasant conversation." The girl didn't get the answer to that question until late in the evening, after she had taken offense at everyone. Daria returned home and locked herself in her room. She was already imagining how the housekeeper and then Dad would come back and urge her to sit at the table. But soon Kathy came back and immediately started pacing around the kitchen with the dishes. After a while, her father pulled up to the house in his SUV, but drove past his daughter's room and didn't even drop the usual on the way. "Daria, how are you?" Such an ignorant attitude towards her person. People close to her surprised and angered her at the same time. Therefore, Daria reluctantly left her shelter. Daria wanted to share her worries with her father and save up for a housekeeper. She was about to knock on the door of her father's study, but he came out. Seeing the daughter, Antonio said to Daria, "Did you do a good job?" "Very good. Thank you for not letting me down. But we'll talk about nice things later. Right now, I need to start a little secret with Kathy." "With whom? With whom?" The girl didn't immediately realize that Kathy was her housekeeper. She was unpleasantly surprised by her father's decision. And at first, she wanted to lock herself back in her room to suffer alone with resentment. But then she changed her mind and tiptoed into the kitchen. Daria knew it was wrong to eavesdrop, so she mentally reassured herself. It's okay to do it once in a while, when it's in the best interest of the common cause. Her intuition told her that her father was discussing something very important with the housekeeper. And because she was so curious, she decided to ignore the rules of decorum. The conversation must have been in full swing, for Anthony's voice was trembling with excitement. "Kathy, of course I realize you have your own life. And frankly, I'm happy for you, but it's all so sudden. It's like you've abandoned me, left me to my own devices. You're overreacting, Anthony. I don't have much to do in this house. And Doria's a big girl. She can manage on her own with a light breakfast. I'm sure you'll have no problem finding an assistant. It's just a click away. Ask your secretary. She won't refuse you such a small favor, will she?" Daria didn't have time to digest the information she had received before she heard her father's footsteps approaching. She hurried to hide in the alcove between the kitchen and the bathroom. As a child, this secret corner had been her safe haven, where she could sit for hours. Her heart was beating frantically, and she feared that the noise would attract her father. Contradictory feelings raged in her soul. On the one hand, he was glad that the pale moth was finally leaving his home. But on the other hand, the prospect of having to do everything herself did not bode well. Stubborn child. Resentment at the governess's behavior took hold of her. And the girl, after waiting for her father to close up in his study, walked confidently toward the kitchen. Kathy stopped at the stove. Without turning around, she said dinner wasn't ready yet. "Be patient, Daria, for about 5 minutes." "I don't want to be patient. Tell me, Kathy, how could you betray Dad and me? Did that guy cheat on you?" The housekeeper laughed. "Doria, were you eavesdropping? I didn't expect you to go down like that. And what guy are you talking about?" "The one you were traveling with in German. I thought he only spoke English. Turns out you can do it in German, French, Italian. I can also clap in your slang." Kathy approached the girl, wanting to hug her pupil, but Daria pulled away from her embrace. Then the woman leaned against the wall, and in a tired voice said to Daria, "There comes a time in everyone's life when they want to change everything. It happened to me today too. It's fate. I didn't even think that everything would change in a day. When you and I were going to the city party, but it turned out that suddenly the guest interpreter, who came from Germany, disappeared. Did you see him with the governor? He's the same one you didn't like for some reason." Daria didn't know what to say and sang reluctantly. Kathy laughed again. "By the way, he is a well-known businessman, head of a large company. He wants to open a production plant in the regional center." Daria interrupted the housekeeper impatiently. "Then let him open it. What's it got to do with you? This man has offered me a job I've never dreamed of." The girl had recovered from the shocking news. She commented with derision, "I see. And you, Kathy, you fell for that German's divorce. He'll leave you at the first opportunity." "Daria, why do you choose the worst options? I can't spend my life serving you. I have to think of myself." Daria had no valid arguments left and left the kitchen with demonstrative disdain, letting dinner continue without me. "I'd had enough tonight to pass the time somehow." Daria turned on the laptop recently given to her by her father. Until midnight, she had been chatting with her friends on social media. Someone had already uploaded a video of her performance at the Art Center opening. He read the positive comments and his heart filled with a pleasant book. In her head, she thought, "I am a star. Now everyone will know me. And that stupid Kathy can get the hell out of here. Daddy will find a new worker." In the morning, when Daria woke up, the house was very quiet. The girl felt terribly hungry and regretted having refused to eat dinner the night before. She said aloud, "Kathy, I'm awake now. We have something to eat." But no one answered the call. Daria walked into the kitchen and saw a note on the table. "Daria, breakfast is in the kitchen. I made this today. I hope you like it better than oatmeal. Have a good appetite. If it's hard, call me." At the bottom, a cell phone number was written in even handwriting. This time, the attack of resentment was so strong that Daria felt a physical pain in the heart area. And in the act, she began to scream, "I hate everyone I hate." Daria felt the attack of resentment again and did not notice the tears rolling down her eyes in two thin knobs. She roared and thought bitterly that if her mother were there now, she would not let them hurt her only daughter. Little did she know that at that very moment she was only in another city. A completely different girl was also roaring in despair. and the reason for the tears, it was a colorful performance. Admittedly, she did not know the name of her doppelganger. The star video, uploaded to the network, in a few hours slipped among the leaders of views. That's why Maria's phone was bursting with calls from her colleagues. But the girl had to listen to mostly unflattering criticism. Maria, and we did not know that in our class, there is a girl with a double ass and quietly you have skillfully passed off as a gray mouse. And you yourself are a star. What kind of speeches can you make? Maria didn't have a laptop or tablet because she and her mother lived very modestly, so she didn't get a chance to watch the video that caused such a stir. But after a string of calls from her classmates, her teacher Kelly called her and asked her sternly, "Maria, tell me, please, why am I the last person to hear about your adventures? It seems to me that you should have informed me and the principal before participating in such activities." Maria tried to explain to the teacher that there had been some mistake and that she had never been to that town in her life. But Kelly yelled at her not to be naive. In the age of technological advances, all things secret quickly come to light. Tomorrow I expect to see you and your mother in the principal's office. You will explain yourselves there. Nina wasn't kidding when, on her way home from work, she caught her daughter Maria crying. "Who hurt you? You know you mustn't get upset." Maria's mother did not fear for her daughter's health in vain. The girl had been ill since she was very young. At the age of 5, she was diagnosed with a heart defect. The doctors said that the pathology was congenital and that there was a good chance that the defect would heal over time. But a positive prognosis is possible only if Mary will eat right and stay away from colds. The list of prohibitions was spinning and negative emotions. Therefore, Nina strictly followed the daily regime of his daughter. She did not allow her to watch horror movies. She also carefully selected from the literature to read. The woman began to scrutinize her daughter's room, trying to guess what exactly it was that made Mary cry. But the girl had already come to her senses a little. "Mom, I haven't watched bad movies or read detectives. I'm just sick of the phone calls. Everyone calls and talks about some video on the internet." Maria tried to tell Mom what had happened. But Nina didn't understand any of her daughter Maria's authoritative narration. "What video? I know more or less where this town is, but I have nothing to do with this settlement. You calm down. Now let's go to the neighbor's house. They have a computer and together we'll watch that damn video that has caused such a stir." The neighbor did not deny him a small servant and even offered to help him. He quickly found the necessary material. Here is the film about the Children's Center. The three watched the 2-minute clip recorded with a cell phone and fell silent. Nina didn't want to believe what she was seeing. No, it couldn't be. Molly said to Nina, "There are other things in the world. You may have heard that somewhere. I think in Brazil there is a town where only twins live." The neighbor wanted to add more intrigue, but Nina cut her off abruptly. "Molly, what does Brazil have to do with twins? Don't be ridiculous. I don't want my daughter to hit her head. That girl looks a lot like her. But at first glance, it's not Maria. Just a slight resemblance, that's all." The neighbor moved her lips resentfully and turned off the computer. "Yeah, I don't really care. I'm not going to get involved in other people's problems. I have enough of my own." All afternoon, Nina tried to distract her daughter from the fun at home, but the image of the girl in the video gave her no peace. And an inner voice kept telling Nina, "You have to find out. It's not just a coincidence, and you know it. You're just afraid that suddenly new circumstances will open up and change everything in your life again. The medical profession says that everyone has phobias. It's just that some people have them hidden. That is, they do not manifest themselves in any way. And in others, these fears run. They express themselves in form. And they greatly complicate a person's life." Thread was haunted by panic attacks since childhood. He lost his mother very early on. And then she passed away suddenly. His father was hit by a truck in broad daylight. Dad was returning from fishing on his bicycle and respected all the rules. But the tragedy could not be avoided. The news that Alex had been hit by a car spread instantly throughout the village. 9-year-old Nina rushed to the scene of the accident, gasping for breath and her heart overflowing with anxiety. But what she saw gave her a real shock. The little girl ran to her father and started screaming in terror, "Dad, please don't die. I'll be lost without you. I'll do anything for you, but don't die." My father was still alive and even tried to smile. "It's nothing, but we've been in more trouble than this. We'll get out of it." The ambulance arrived and the paramedics began emergency treatment. The strict paramedic shouted to the women in the village, "What are you standing there for? Somebody take the girl away. She doesn't need to see this." Someone's strong arms lifted Nina up and carried her away. She was hysterical. "Let me go to my father. He'll die without me." But a familiar voice tried to calm her. "Nina, don't yell at Dad. It won't do any good. They'll take him to the hospital and treat him there. In the meantime, you'll stay with us." That voice belonged to a friend of Max's father. She didn't want to believe the man, so she calmed down. But all night long, she kept screaming. She had nightmares about her father. She wanted to save him from horrible creatures with fiery heads, but each time it started all over again. In the morning, she had a fever, and Uncle Max's wife nursed her for a week. The girl was sick, and when she felt a little better, she learned that her dad had died. The same afternoon after the terrible accident, Max took her to the cemetery and showed her her father's grave. The next day, a relative of her mother's, whom she had seen for the first time in her life, came to pick her up, and he took her with him. They took a long train ride, and Uncle Peter told her funny stories all the way. It was a proven way for the mother's stepbrother to distract his niece from bad thoughts. "Nina, don't be afraid. You'll forget all the bad stuff in the new place. By the way, do you have a little sister? Her name is Christina. She's my daughter. She's about 3 years older than you, but I'm sure you'll become friends." Uncle Peter and his wife tried to surround her with love and care. They partly succeeded, and the child gradually came to her senses. A wonderful relationship has developed with Christina, the couple's daughter. But the past did not want to let Nina go, and it came to her in her dreams, even during the day when the girl was alone. A year passed, then another. But these terrible dreams were repeated with surprising regularity. So Peter's uncle decided to take his niece to a specialist. The child psychologist talked with her for quite a while and then asked her to draw some pictures on a certain topic. Nina did not hear what Uncle Peter's doctor said after this test, but he prescribed her the beautiful pills, which she was to take twice a day. It is true that after this medicine, Nina became inhibited and scattered. Uncle Peter wanted to show her to the doctor again, but with a different profile. But then his wife, Aunt Sophia, came to the defense of the unfortunate. "Stop abusing children. You don't need those pills. You should show it to Grandma, and she'll take them all away." "Uncle Peter, don't you like that idea?" "Sophia, I didn't realize you were such a dunce. Only certified medical professionals can be entrusted with your health." The woman didn't give up. Doctors are often impotent. Therefore, do not neglect the proven folk methods. I myself, as a child from a fright grandmother, treated me, and Nina will help. I was given the address of a woman. They say that she cures from all sorts of scares. Sophia, that's nonsense. Even the most experienced doctor can't cure all diseases. That's why people turn to witch doctors when doctors refuse to treat hopeless patients. Uncle Peter didn't bother to argue with his wife and waved his hand for her to do whatever she wanted. But remember that you will be personally responsible for the consequences. Aunt Sophia was pleased with her victory and whispered to Nina, "On Saturday, you and I will go to see a grandmother who will take away your fears. Don't be afraid of anything or anything. Listen to your uncle. He's big, but he's afraid of everything." Nina remembers very well a visit to an old woman who lived in a little village near the forest. The old woman whispered something to her for a long time. Then she sprinkled Nina with the water stipulated by the aunt. She said that the girl was very frightened. "We must bring her twice more." Aunt Sophia promised, "All right, we will try to come." But already after the first session, Nina felt better. She no longer had scary dreams and was not afraid to be alone in the room. Aunt Sophia watched her niece for a while, and then confidently said, "My friend, we're not going anywhere with you. Stop torturing yourself, you have suffered enough. Live, my daughter, and be happy." Nina tried hard to follow her aunt's advice. She studied diligently at school and then enrolled in a hairdressing course. Her older sister had already graduated in medicine and was very surprised at Nina's choice. She could have found a more respectable profession. With your diploma, you could have studied law or pedagogy, and you went into hairdressing. Nina gave a succinct answer. I always wanted to beautify people. Actually, the reason for this choice was that she was in a hurry to become independent as soon as possible. Her aunt and uncle had done a lot for her. They had replaced her parents. But time was passing, and they were dressing up a lot, getting older. They both developed health problems, and Nina no longer wanted to be a burden to them. After finishing college, she got a job in a beauty salon, and a good salary allowed her to rent a room. But every weekend, the girl visited her relatives. The connection with them was not broken. And after Nina married Martin and permanently moved to another city. With her husband, the threads too, a very lucky one, despite the fact that he was older than her by a total of 15 years. Martin was engaged in road transport, and the family was never short of money. Savlieva bought a 2-room apartment on the secondary market and began to dream of having a child. But there were years with the continuation of labor. The case has not moved from a standstill. Spouses began to go to doctors' offices, but after a thorough examination heard the final verdict. Doctors are very sorry, but you cannot have children together. Nina. After the doctor's words, I experienced exactly the same shock as when I looked at my dying father in my childhood. This time her hope was dying, and she would not accept it and decided to argue with the doctor. Doctor, if we have understood you correctly, do you think my husband and I are hopeless? The doctor coughed for emphasis. Exactly. But there are methods that allow people to become parents. You are right, there are such innovative methods, but in your case, their application is impossible due to the infertility of your spouse. Usually in such situations, donor material is recommended, but very rarely do our clinics accept this option. So what should we do? The doctor was silent for a long time and then said in a tired voice, I really want to help you. Believe me, I am speaking sincerely from the bottom of my heart. But the only thing I can advise you to do is to take the baby into foster care. Martin asked quietly, So you are advising us to adopt a baby? That's exactly the best way to foster a newborn. Believe me, in that case, the baby will become a real member of the family. Martin looked at his wife fondly. I think the doctor is right. If we make even one little person happy, life won't be a waste. I think so. Nina did not immediately accept her husband's decision. She hesitated for a few months, but then decided to consult her older sister. After all, Christina worked in this field and could not only give useful advice, but also render substantial help. In order to meet her sister, Nina even took a leave of absence from work and went to the city where she had spent the most beautiful years of her life. Christina met her sister at the train station and cheerfully informed her that you had arrived very successfully. I mean our conversation with you. Nina did not want her plans to become public. She whispered to her sister Christina, It seems to me that the train station is not exactly a suitable place to discuss such matters. The relative waved her hand. Believe me, no one here cares about you. Even if you talk out loud about something out of the ordinary, no one will turn around. I started this conversation because we have to hurry. We have a 2-month-old baby. She's a little thin, but she's active. She was brought to us the other day, and there's already a queue of people wanting to adopt her. Nina felt an inexplicable fluttering in her chest. Christina, what do? We have to act. The first thing is to meet the baby. What if you don't like each other? Christina was joking, though. Nina felt a strong excitement again. This happens to people when they jump into the water or fly around the planet. But the young girl's fears were in vain, because the abandoned baby smiled and started walking at the sight of her. Nina hesitantly asked her sister Christina, Can I hold her for a while? Of course you can. Those few minutes the woman remembered for the rest of her life. She barely held the little body in her arms. She felt an incredible surge of energy. Her heart was overflowing with a love of universal proportions. The little girl smiled at him again and said something to him in his incomprehensible language. Suddenly, she kissed the girl on the forehead. I will not give you to anyone. From today, we will always be together with you. But it's one thing to say it and another to do it. The adoption proceedings were delayed. The bureaucrats in the army of civil servants kept finding fault or demanding new certificates. As a result, the couple had to settle for a month in Christina's small apartment. But the older sister assured that her family was used to the cramped conditions. We spent 5 years in a 10-meter room in the dormitory, so we have not yet had time to get used to this house. Thanks to her sister's help, the adoption was arranged in a relatively short time. The 3 of them returned home, and Nina was thinking the whole way, it must be fate. Martin and I are fabulously lucky that Christina works. If it weren't for her, there's no telling how long we would have been looking for our baby. And now we have a baby girl, a woman who has suffered so much. I fanatically believed that with Mary's appearance in the family for all eternity, peace and happiness would reign. But these hopes were not fulfilled because Martin could not accept someone else's child. During the first year, he tried hard to be a father to Mary. But Nina saw that her husband did not do it because of the call of his heart. When the adopted daughter grew up and began to explore the world around her, the man became irritable. She stopped smiling and returned home as her daughter slept. Nina realized that something had to be done urgently to save the family. One day she said firmly to Martin, "We have to have a serious talk because we can't go on like this." The man immediately sank onto the couch. He wrapped his arms around his head in a kind of terrifying doom and said, "Nina, I'm sorry, but I haven't calculated my strength. I've tried, but I can't accept this child. As soon as I approach her, a hammer starts pounding on my temples. That girl is a stranger to you." Nina expected anything but this confession, but with numb lips she whispered to Martin, "What do we do now?" The man got up from the couch and started kissing her hands. "Nina, let's take the girl back to the place we took her from, okay? She's still little, she won't remember anything. She will still have a chance to have a family." The woman interrupted her husband's optimistic speech. "Martin, you make it sound like you and I borrowed a dog. You've had enough of it, and now you want to give it away to someone you know. That's no way to treat a dog, you know?" Nina didn't realize she was yelling. Her husband tried to calm her down. "Let's not get nervous now. It's a very complicated matter that can't be solved all at once. Martin, I've made a decision. I'm not going to tell on Maria." The man realized that he could not change his wife's mind and threw out with irritation, "Then I will have to leave this house." In the morning, Martin gathered his things and without a word to his wife disappeared forever from his life. The former spouses met 2 years later at the courthouse. At the divorce trial, the man with undisguised arrogance looked at Nina, and the fate of a single mother did not go in her favor. She does not look very good. Nina did not want to get into an argument with Martin, but did not miss the opportunity to poke him. "But you're divorced like a hog, and it's not a good life." Martin blushed 0. "You're not. You'd better thank me for leaving your floor. You might say I did it for free." Such insolence infuriated the woman to the depths of her soul, because she was still paying off the loan, which she herself foolishly contracted when she and her husband bought the apartment. She reminded the man of this, and he was immediately taken out of the mood, giving the woman the right. The court hearing lasted a little over an hour, and the spouses divorced by mutual consent. Nina fully assumed the responsibilities of raising an adopted daughter, and Martin voluntarily refused to fulfill his parental duties. Several years passed, and Nina learned that her ex-husband had remarried. Ironically, her new chosen one had 2 children from his first marriage. Only once did they meet by chance in a shopping mall. Martin was not ashamed and rushed to separate from his ex-wife as soon as possible. An apology is expected. The woman asked Martin, "Admit it, are you happy?" Martin shrugged his shoulders, unsure. "I don't know. I guess I'm happy." Nina took a long look at the man and thought bitterly that everyone had a different idea of happiness. Being in a cell-like capsule was very unpleasant. Nina waited impatiently for the young nurse to release her from the confined space. The machine whirred above the old woman's head, and the monotonous voice made her feel quite uncomfortable. Even though she had been warned not to move or speak, she did not control herself. "Girl, how much longer is this going to go on?" The nurse cheerfully told her that her torment was over. "Now can you get up with the girl's help?" Nina got up and began to dress. The nurse wrote something on her card and at the same time shared her observations. "I have been working here for 3 years and I never cease to be amazed. Smart people have invented this wonderful device, which allows to detect any disease at the earliest stage. The patients are still dissatisfied. Is it so hard to be patient for a few minutes?" Nina realized that the question was addressed to her. It's not difficult, of course, but it's very unpleasant to lie there and hear something buzzing above you. It sounds as if a needle is about to come out of nowhere and drink into your brain. The girl laughed. "You have a great imagination. A surprising trait for such a mature age." The patient smiled. "Thank you for sparing my life. But it seems to me, colleague, that tact is not always appropriate in a medical institution." The girl wondered, "Are you also a medical professional?" Nina replied with undisguised pleasure, "And I have devoted 45 years to medicine." These hands have claimed more than 100 new lives. To convince the woman showed the nurse. Her friendly hands, the girl looked respectfully. "The results of your examination will be ready in about 15 minutes. I will take them to your doctor myself." Nina thanked the nurse and went to the office, where her fate would soon be decided. She sat comfortably on a free couch and waited her turn. Nina had lived almost 7 decades and rarely complained about her health. In her younger years, she was a serious skier and was even a regional champion. With age, her hobbies changed a bit, but physical activity was always the basis of her lifestyle. Her coworkers often joke that our Nina has a jet engine in one place. With that activity, she will work until she is 100 years old. Matron herself was not swinging on those terms, and she also said it jokingly to her daughters. "I doubt until I'm 100, but I will work until they take me off the ward." When it came time to draw up the pension, Nina boldly declared, "I'll work alone for a while longer. It's boring to be between 4 walls." Everyone knew that the woman had no one but her niece. The clinic's management met her needs and extended her contract, and Nina continued to share her invaluable experience with the young addition. But she had barely passed her 7th decade, and her health was failing badly. Weakness, severe dizziness, loss of appetite appeared. For some time, the woman attributed these symptoms to age-related changes in the organism. But then he began to lose weight, and this alarming sign could not be ignored. Her strength was fading day by day, and she had to take a well-deserved vacation to distract herself from her sad thoughts. At first, Nina took to reading books and then sought the friendship of the women in the neighborhood. She believed that positive emotions would help her to improve her health, but to no avail, and the weight continued its rapid decline. There came a time when she fainted in the store. It was then that the woman decided to take serious care of her health. She had already undergone many tests, but the doctors could not determine the cause of her ailment. This question kept her awake at night. She tossed and turned sleeplessly, repeating, "Lord, why am I being punished? Wherein have I sinned before you?" Memory held different versions of transgressions, but all were insignificant except one. Nina tried to banish the unpleasant memories, but they began to disturb her consciousness more and more often. To rid herself of this pleasure, she decided to consult an expert woman. Wendy was a very devout woman who always attended Sunday and holiday services at the local church. After listening to Nina, Dove told her, "You have to take communion. Tell your sins to the bishop, cleanse your soul, and believe me, you will feel better right away." The neighbor spoke so convincingly that she believed her and went along with her to the service on Sunday. But at the most crucial moment, when she had to tell the priest about her criminal act, which she had committed 12 years ago, the woman screamed. She still remembers the priest's piercing look and his words, "Repent, sister, and you will feel better." But instead of repenting, Nina murmured in confusion, "I'm sorry, I can't." "Maybe another time, Wendy, but maybe another time," she said. "Maybe another time, Wendy," but then she rebuked her. "You shouldn't be like that, Nana. Our sins keep us from living. They weigh heavily on our hearts." Nina timidly objected, "Because there are different kinds of sins, and maybe my offense is not as serious as it seems. I did it for pure motives. Tell me, what is your sin?" The woman was about to open her soul to her neighbor, but she noticed curiosity in his eyes. And she thought that if she did not trust the father, then this Wendy should not open her secret. It will spread throughout the neighborhood than me. Nina was even mentally afraid to call herself a criminal. She again withdrew into herself, trying to find other ways to escape from her obsessive thoughts. The office door opened and the nurse called her name. The standing woman walked over to the desk where the caped doctor sat. The doctor didn't even look at the elderly patient and nodded to her. "Sit down." The woman sat down and watched the doctor, who was writing something in illegible handwriting. 5 minutes passed. Finally, the doctor put aside the previous patient's chart and began to read the results of Nina's examination. As he studied the conclusion, his face became increasingly grim. He looked at the patient and immediately looked away. "Unfortunately, Nina, I have nothing to please you. To be frank, the situation is very bad." The old woman felt a tremor throughout her body. "I have cancer." The doctor kept silent and looked away from the window. The patient had to repeat the same question. "Doctor, I have cancer." "You are too late. It's advanced. It has metastasized." "Given your age, doctor, I understand. I've also worked in medicine for almost half a century. Can you tell me how much time I have left?" "Unfortunately, that's a question no one can answer, and I don't advise you to prepare for an imminent end. With proper treatment, you can slow down the process. And will you still have a few years left to enjoy your loved ones?" "I have no one." "Thank you, doctor, for your frank answer. I will consider whether I should receive treatment." The doctor was surprised at the woman. What kind of reflection can there be in a situation where even one day is important? "I am writing you a referral for urgent hospitalization." "Doctor, can I come back tomorrow? I have some business to take care of." The doctor disagreed. "Okay, I'll let you go until tomorrow." "I'll let you go until tomorrow." Nina couldn't remember how she had gotten to her apartment. She wanted to cry so badly, but there were no tears. She sat on the couch prostrate until evening. Then she reached for her cell phone. Her usual friends had forgotten about her. She hadn't even called anyone, so the phone lay orphaned, waiting for its owner to remember it. In her dresser drawer, the woman frantically searched for her niece's number, as long as she didn't change it. Luckily, after the first beep, the phone rang with a familiar voice. "Aunt Miranda, is something wrong?" Nina felt tears rolling down her cheeks with 2 hands. "My grandfather has diagnosed me with a serious illness. It is heaven's punishment for a grave sin. Aunt Miranda, don't despair. I will come to see you tomorrow. Kathy, I won't be home. I'm going to be hospitalized. But it doesn't matter. I'll come tomorrow. And please don't fill your head with nonsense." Kathy kept her word. And the next day, she showed up at her relative's room at lunchtime. She brought with her 2 bags of fruit, Juice's kissed aunt, and cheerfully said, "Here is a supply of vitamins, so that all this will be destroyed in 2 days." Nina looked at her niece hopefully. "Will you come to see me again?" "Of course I will. How could I leave you alone?" "Kathy, my dear, why are you showing me so much favor?" "Because last time I treated you so badly." Nina burst into tears. Kathy stroked her gray head and soothed her like a child. "Don't cry. I don't hold a grudge. And it's been so many years." "Why remember the past?" objected the aunt. "How can you not remember it if it doesn't give you peace?" "These memories upset me. I never believed in magic and other nonsense, and now I believe it. My illness is a punishment for a terrible sin I committed when I had a sound mind and a strong memory." Kathy was worried about her aunt's condition, but she couldn't wait to tell her biggest secret, and the niece had to give in to her aunt. But as the woman told her terrible secret, terror gripped her. "Kathy, please don't interrupt me. You're the only one I can trust. Maybe you can correct my mistake, Aunt. I'll try if it's in my power." Nina covered her eyes and began her confession. "It happened 12 years ago, if we don't count another 2 months and a few days. My shift was coming to an end when my shift partner called to tell me she was having problems with her family. She asked me to fill in for her, promising that I would work the substitute's shift afterward. I agreed. There were only 7 laboring women in the room and one 18-year-old bimbo who kept saying she didn't want to have a baby. She ran out of the room several times and asked me to give her a pen and paper. She wanted to write a cancellation, but I explained the rules and she seemed to calm down. I had a cup of tea and pulled myself together. Then I got a call from the emergency room. They had brought in a woman with kinks. Well, it's not the first time. And of course I didn't hesitate. I thought I could handle it myself. The baby was born very weak. She took a chance and died. Mom is hysterical, says she's had IVF 3 times. The first 2 times she had miscarriages, so the 3rd pregnancy she was in labor. She took a couple of days off to go home. It was my husband's anniversary, and then she went into labor. I did everything I could to calm the unfortunate one down, advised her to try again. But she said it was the last attempt because she was at the limit of her age. Nina kept quiet, and Kathy thought she had fallen asleep. But the woman wrinkled her nose painfully and asked for water. She quenched her thirst and continued, while calming that mother. The girl who was going to write the cancellation went into labor, and that's when I made a fatal mistake. I again relied on my experience and did not call the on-call doctor. Although what could help the district therapist in that difficult situation? The delivery was quick, and it turned out that the baby girl walked with a double. The first child came into the world safe and sound, immediately screaming. With the second baby, I had to struggle while taking care of her. My young parturient started to bleed. The situation was critical, but my brain was working like a computer. The first woman was still in the delivery room, and I suggested she take the baby from the twin. There was no time to think about it, because the resuscitation team had to be called urgently. The woman understood the complexity of the situation and agreed immediately. She even promised to thank me generously. Then Nina paused again. Kathy said, "Tia, you are very tired. You need to rest. Don't worry. I'll sit here, and then you can tell me what happened." The woman gave them a big smile. What happened next was nothing special. They took the young mother to intensive care, but they couldn't save her. The girl did not plan to become a mother from the beginning. She was not registered at the antenatal clinic. Later it became known, according to her friends, that she tried several times to get rid of the pregnancy, but the twins turned out to be very lively. And how the lucky mother thanked her. The aunt smiled again. Not like I found her later in the archives. Turns out this lady was the wife of a big boss. When she saw me, she started screaming up and down the street that I was an extortionist. She threatened to call the police. And how did that turn out? Nothing. I gave up and wished her well. I saw her around town a lot after that, but she always pretended she didn't know me. But I'm proud to, so I didn't try to be friends with her anymore. At first, however, I wanted very much to tell her husband everything, but then I changed my mind. I imagined how they would vent their anger on the child, and I lost all desire to defend the truth. The more the aunt opened the veil of secrecy, the clearer the picture became for Kathy. She collated some of the facts she knew and realized who the woman was. What remained unclear was the fate of the second child. But Nina shook her head, Kathy. It is this circumstance that weighs most heavily on me. I would probably give the rest of my life without regret to know anything about the second child. All I know is that she was sent to the nursing home because she was so weak. God only knows what happened to her afterwards. Kathy returned home with a strange feeling of emptiness. She did not accuse her aunt of any crime, although what she had done fell into that category. I don't know how I would have acted in my aunt's place, but how could I tie the ends of the same rope together? There were many more questions Kathy was trying to answer. She realized that no one gave her the right to interfere in people's destinies, but she could not remain indifferent. For a moment, she imagined how she would carry her aunt's secret for years, and she realized that she had to do everything possible to reunite her sisters. This year's autumn came unexpectedly yesterday. The sun was shining brightly, sparing no heat. But in the morning, the sky was covered with clouds and it began to rain. Maria looked out of the window. "Mom, why is everything in life so unfair? I thought the weather would be nice on September 1, but the weather is so bad I don't even want to go out." Nina smiles. A famous song says that nature doesn't have bad weather. That's what the song says, but in real life it's different. It's good for you, Mom, that you're hiding in your living room now. And I'm stuck on the line in the rain. Nina put the omelette on the plates. Sit down, my sufferer, for breakfast to share your grief. I'm going to school for the line too. Maria is hanging from her mother's neck. It's so cool. Too bad we don't have a camera. Otherwise, you would have photographed me a couple of times. The woman smiled enigmatically again. And now a moment, attention. There will now be a singing magic session. Pick up Maria's phone. The little girl was speechless at the sight of a small box in her mother's hands. Mommy, it's amazing. A real smartphone is amazing, but it's very expensive. Maria pushed the box with the device away from her. Nina reassured her daughter. Don't worry, everything is fine. I've paid off all the loans and decided to give you a senior gift. By the way, I have some regular clients who have also been doing their hair at home. They pay me a little extra for special services. Maria lost her appetite and couldn't take her eyes off the wonderful box. Mom, when I grow up, will I buy you a car? No, I'll give you a whole living room and you'll own it. Nina wanted to thank her daughter for her good intentions, but she didn't have time to do it, because Maria suddenly asked Mom, You think this girl who looks like me? She has her own smartphone. The woman was taken aback. Maria, why do you remember this girl? Sometimes I dream about her. She says we are sisters. As Nina pondered, Maria continued. Once I dreamed we were walking together. Then she asked me in a dream to go see her. Daughter, they're just dreams. You shouldn't believe them. The girl was confused, so she was unable to give a coherent answer. I have read that there are prophetic dreams in which everything is fulfilled exactly down to the smallest detail. Mom, after all, nothing prevents you and me from going to this city. I looked on the map. It's not far from here. We can walk, said Nina as sternly as possible. I don't think we should go out of our way for a video clip. At least that kind of trip is not on my agenda right now. Let's finish our breakfast and get out of here. All day long, this conversation with my daughter had been a nuisance. I was taking care of a customer. I was thinking about that other girl. The thought was so thick in the woman's mind that she couldn't take it anymore and called her sister. Christina, I need to ask you something. What is it? Tell me what's on your mind. It's not convenient on the phone. I heard Christina sigh. More secrets. Then let's talk on the phone. Sister, you know my finances are tight. Oh, wait, I can ask my neighbor. Oh, that's great. Call me tonight and we'll talk. At the appointed time, Nina told her daughter she had to go out for a while. Maria didn't mind. She was busy with her new smartphone. Mom, don't worry, I won't get bored. You can even go on a date. Aren't you tired of always being at home? Murmured the woman, young enough to give advice to adults. Trying not to make too much noise, Nina rang the doorbell next door. Molly looked at the visitors in surprise. Nina, what's wrong again? No, we're fine. We just need your help again to sweeten an awkward moment. The guest pulled out a beautiful box of chocolates. The neighbor smiled at the painful trio of fillies filled with walnuts. I'm an unconditional fan of this treat. Thanks, Nina. You're welcome. What's your problem? I need to make a call to a friend. No, not a friend, my sister. Now bear with me for 6 seconds. Sure enough, after a complicated manipulation by Aunt Dina, Christina appeared on the screen. She waved her hand in greeting. Hello, Nina, to you and your neighbor. Go on, say it. Something's come up. Nina gave an expressive look to the landlady, who hastened to erase it all with Teratorkin. I won't disturb you. I'll go put on some tea. Nina made sure that there were no extra ears in the room and hurried to tell her sister the gist of the case. Christina, try to find out where Maria came from and under what circumstances. 25 again. Why are you stirring up the past? Also, your Maria's life, though modest, is quite settled. But find out the truth. And what will that change? Christina, you see, some circumstances have come to light that have made me take this step. The fact is that my Maria most likely has a sister. Nina briefly told her about that clip with the girl, who was an exact copy of her adopted daughter. Kristina Petrovna did not respond immediately. I must admit that I was dumbfounded, but I will try to find out everything quickly. although it will be difficult for me to do so. After all, access to the archives is only open to a separate list of people, and I haven't worked there for a long time. You still haven't told your mother that you're not related to her. Not yet, I can't decide. And it's wrong because I don't have anyone else in the world who is related to that girl. I understand. You'll hear from me in a couple of days. Next communication session. Nina waited with a fanatical desire to get to the truth, and her patience was rewarded. Her sister called a day earlier than promised. Nina, are you standing? What is there to swear then? I have so much news for you that you may not be able to stand. I've seen a lot of melodramas on TV, but I didn't expect such a story to unfold in front of my eyes. Anyway, this morning I went on your errand, and I came face to face with a lady who was also interested in the events of 12 years ago. Nina tensed up, and her heart was pounding so hard she couldn't make out what her sister was saying. Meanwhile, Christina kept pouring out information. There is no 100% certainty, but we can assume there are two of them. So she's a twin of another girl who is also being raised in foster care. But it's a complicated story, so I think you need to meet that woman and talk to her. Nina had not yet realized what her sister had told her. Speechless, she repeated over and over again. Yes, of course. Anyway, I'll give you this lady's phone number and you'll make arrangements with her. Whenever it's convenient for you to meet. Daria didn't know what to do with herself. The beginning of the school year didn't make her happy because the class was as boring as last year. It was better to watch TV, even if there was only trash on the program. I can't wait for Daddy to come. How many times have I asked him to take me somewhere? He doesn't have time. Daria texted from corner to corner. Suddenly, she remembered Kathy and almost burst with longing. If I hadn't messed with her, she wouldn't have run away from us. Right now, I'd give anything for some sultana raisin oatmeal, which only Kathy could make so deliciously. I wonder where she is now. Daria started rummaging through her desk drawer, which was in chaos. Where's the damn note? I remember I didn't throw it away. Finally, after a long search, the girl retrieved a crumpled piece of paper from a selection of notebooks. She began to smooth it out, saying, "Here's Kathy's phone number. Now I'm going to call her and tell her what I'm going to tell her to make it sound credible. I'm going to tell her that my English is a mess." Daria realized that wasn't exactly a good reason to start the course. But there was no other option, and determinedly she dialed the former governess's number. Kathy answered no immediately. "Daria, weren't you expecting your call?" "No, it's all right." "Kathy, hi, I wouldn't bother you, but my English is a complete mess." "Have you changed?" They don't use literary words. If it cuts off your ears, I'm sorry, really, but I just wanted to hear from you, to know how you're doing in the capital of our region. And I'm looking forward to seeing you too. Daria felt something protective in her eyes, and her voice trailed off. "It's not true, I want to see you. That's a bad thing. Dad is always busy and the new maid comes every other day. She cleans and cooks well. Still, it was better with you. Daria, I'll definitely come v. Arkhipov, as soon as I get a chance." Did the girl ask when you'll get that chance? "Maybe at the end of this week. Don't cry, I beg you very much." "All right, I'll try." After a brief conversation with Kathy, Daria's mood improved a little. She decided to please her father and set the table for dinner. Anthony was surprised at his daughter. "There's nothing wrong with you." "Yes, if you're surprised that I decided to be a bit of a hostess. I confess I was favorably affected by Kathy's call." "Kathy called you. How's she doing?" "I don't know the details, but she said she's fine. She works for the company as a translator. She's not married yet." "Wow, you even asked me that question. Don't you think it's unseemly for young girls to ask about other people's private lives?" Daria put her hands to her sides and defiantly asked Dad, "Is it decent to leave your only daughter alone in this huge house? I'll soon die of boredom." Anthony realized that the conversation was taking on an unpleasant tone. "Daughter, I promise that next weekend you and I will go out together. If you want, we'll go fishing or to the regional center. There's plenty of entertainment there." Daria gave him a mischievous look. "Next time we'll go fishing, but this Sunday we'll go to the park with you. And what will we do there? You'll relax and watch your daughter work." Dad, I've been asked to organize a fall dance in the park. I'll wear the same dress I wore with Kathy to the opening of the art center. The idea of a day out is much appreciated, Anthony. Thank you, daughter, for the invitation. But you must realize that my person will attract unnecessary attention. Dad, is it hard for you to say a few words? No, it's not. Let's just say you've convinced me. Both father and daughter were looking forward to Sunday. The opening was scheduled for 11 o'clock, but Daria left the house an hour early. Dad, try not to be late, or you'll miss all the fun. The man watched from the window as his daughter gracefully walked through the puddles left by yesterday's rain. He had always loved this activity, and now he admired the girl with a thrill in his heart. Soon as a bird, she will fly away from this house. And you, Anthony, will be left alone, though he had long since given up on himself. But as the years passed, more and more often the thought came to his mind that it was wrong not to have a life of his own. The man put on a strict jacket and looked critically at his reflection. The mayor was also a human being, and perhaps he deserved attention and understanding. There were already many citizens in the park. It was only a few minutes before the event, and Anthony tried to find his daughter with his eyes. Suddenly, on one of the paths, he saw his daughter's face and waved to her. Strangely, his daughter did not respond to his greeting and even turned away. The man muttered, "What's the matter? Hasn't she noticed me?" His elevated status did not allow him to shout or take other actions that could be taken badly. So Antonio headed towards the road where the daughter had passed. He was greeted by the townspeople and responded to everyone with a smile and warm words. This distracted the mayor, who finally lost sight of his daughter. Suddenly, a woman's voice sounded nearby. "Maria, get out of the way. Can't you see you are disturbing the people?" Antonio turned around abruptly and froze in astonishment. In front of him stood a girl like two peas in a pod, similar to Daria. Only her hair was shorter and her attire different. For a moment he felt dizzy, but was pulled out of his unpleasant state by the same female voice. "Are you sick? You've gone very pale. Maria, give it to me. You will see that the man feels sick." Anthony looked at the woman, then at the girl named Maria, and closed his eyes sharply. When he cautiously opened his eyes, the couple was still watching him from the side of the stage. Triumphant music was heard, and Daria Anthony jumped onto the stage to applause. "Hello, my favorite Arkhipov. We're having a party today, and my friends, and I want to give you all a good mood." A burst of applause spread through the park. Anthony still had not managed to get away from the mom with the girl who looked so much like his daughter. At first, this fact didn't even strike him as odd, and he wanted to approach the stage. But Maria said in a very loud voice, Mom, look, it's the girl from the video. Can I come closer? I really want to meet her." The woman tried to hold the girl. "Maria, let's put the introductions on hold. Your interference could interfere with the festivities." "Mom, I'll watch quietly." "Don't you realize this is the girl who asked me in her dreams to come?" The woman was confused and looked to Anthony for support. "It's a striking resemblance, isn't it? The hostess at the party looks a lot like my daughter. I wonder how old she is." Something very painful crushed the man's throat. He loosened the knot in his tie. "This is my daughter Daria. She turned 12 in May." The woman rejoiced, "And my Maria's birthday is in early June. She and I and another acquaintance are traveling to her city. And what exactly attracted you to this city? If it's no secret." The woman didn't have time to answer because the host invited the mayor on stage. Anthony walked back down the path, only in the opposite direction. Behind him came a murmur. He saw the mayor's daughter and that girl. She's a lot alike. The only way that could happen is if those young women were twins. The man had heard it all, but he had no right to reply to people's comments. There was no way for him to stop or leave the park. During the short drive he had made to the site of the next performance, Anthony had had time to change his mind, but he wasn't naive enough to believe in coincidence. Daria couldn't see or even guess what was going on down there by the ramp. She was enjoying her next moment of glory and reveling in the applause and appreciative crowd. When Anthony took the stage, he handed her the microphone, and she mentioned herself on the sidelines. Throughout her many years in a position of responsibility, Anthony realized that ordinary people appreciate more sincere words that come from the heart. He did not abuse the attention of the audience and briefly greeted everyone present. On this beautiful September day, I would like to wish all of you, dear compatriots, a festive atmosphere. And may all the homes of our dear city be bright and welcoming. The voices of his children rang out. The party continued, and Antonio began to think feverishly about what he should do next. His head was splintering with all sorts of thoughts. When he saw Kathy at his side, Kathy, Anthony, if only for a second, forgot everything because Kathy impressed him. There was something very different about her, as if she were a compressed spring. Kathy held her head high, her gaze straight and open. But seconds passed, and Anthony let out a long sigh. It would be interesting, of course, to chat with her, to find out how she was doing. But that didn't matter to him at the moment. He was about to tell Kathy. Daria walked past him. She almost made the mistake of running him over, literally bumping into Kathy. She smiled and hugged Daria. So you keep carrying everything in your path. A while ago, Daria would have been offended, even responded rudely. Now she was smiling. Kathy, did you see my performance? Of course I saw it, and I wasn't the only one. Kathy looked at Anthony, who was staring at the girl his daughter looked so much like. Anthony, if you're looking for Maria and her mother, they're waiting for us at the cafe on the boardwalk. The man turned slowly toward Kathy. He felt the earth tremble beneath his feet. All the worst suspicions were beginning to come true. Had she hit her head? No, he doesn't want to know anything, let alone change anything. Daria is his daughter, and no other situation interests him. He was about to tell Kathy, but suddenly the thought came to his mind that maybe Daria is his daughter. And that girl too, although it wasn't impossible. He had been several times to ultrasounds with his wife, and had clearly seen a boy. Kathy, I'm sorry, but Daria and I can't go today. Kathy interrupted him. Anthony, we have to. You realize it's better to talk. They're not accusing you of anything. People just want to know the truth. And the man who caused all this wants to be rid of this sin before he dies. Daria looked fearfully at her father. Dad, what is he talking about? Kathy smiled at him. Daria, are you afraid? You've never been afraid of anything. If your father decides to do it, there's someone I'm going to introduce you to. Daria's in a pose. Actually, she has friends waiting for her. Well, I don't know, maybe she doesn't want to meet anyone. I've got Anthony interrupting Daria's daughter. We're going to have to go because I'm not going to be able to sleep well now anyway. Dad, what's wrong? He shrugged his shoulders. If Mom were alive, she could probably shed some light on all this. After saying that, Daria calmed down. Kathy and Anthony stepped forward, with Daria trailing behind. Kathy, what did you have to do with this? I had nothing to do with it. My aunt. We don't socialize enough to know the details, or I used to. And now that my aunt is dying, I wanted to know if the other girl was alive. It just so happened that we all met at the same time. Together, we were able to discover many interesting things. The man was completely lost. He didn't know what he was going to hear. But of one thing he was sure, it was not good. They approached the summer cafe. And then they heard Mom, look, there she is. Daria stopped. She looked at the man who had spoken. Then she looked at her father. Dad, who is it? I thought it was just a dream. I've dreamed about her several times. Anthony convinced his daughter. I don't know the rest either. I hope it all becomes clear now. He turned his eyes to Maria's mother and froze. Nina was looking at Daria with a kind of greediness. She slowly shifted her gaze to him. Anthony, Kathy looked at them in confusion. I don't understand. Do you two know each other? Anthony nodded slowly. They hastened to add, we only crossed paths a couple of times. That was a long time ago. The woman couldn't tell that about 8 years ago, Anthony had somehow been drawn back to her city. And lucky for her, at her beauty salon, she needed to get in shape because, she said, she was about to grow pigtails for her job. Nina and the other girls tried to explain to him that it was a women's salon. But Anthony wouldn't listen to anyone. So Nina, in order not to make a fuss with such a client, offered to cut his hair. She left a very generous tip and then apologized, saying it had been a hard day. And an hour later, negotiations. A Apparently, the negotiation was over before it began. Because when she left, Anthony was waiting for her. Anthony was never much of a go-getter, but this time it was like he was on a roll. And Nina wouldn't let the men near her. And here she thought they were newcomers, so no one owed anyone anything. They actually only saw each other 3 times. And then Anthony went off to his own town. Nina tried to put it out of her mind. And now that he was in front of her, she looked at him in confusion. She thought about the fact that 5 minutes ago it had seemed to her that her problems were of universal proportions. But now they had become of totally inexplicable proportions. Everyone sat down at the table. Maria and Daria couldn't take their eyes off each other. Kathy's gaze immediately went to the professor. I think it's best if the girls go outside, let them talk. While we're here solving adult problems. Neither Daria nor Maria. They didn't argue. They went downstairs. And the last thing Kathy heard was, "What kind of ice cream do you like?" "I'm from school." "You're kidding. I just eat it too." Kathy smiled. How much less do rule kids have frosting and stuff? What's to stop them from communicating in a second? Kathy had already sat down at the table. Well, who's going to start? Anthony raised his hand. Let me do it. Daria's daughter is mine and my spouse's. I took care of her throughout her pregnancy. We went to the doctor together, so we have nothing criminal. I'm sure science will find many explanations for this similarity. Nina nodded. I would like to support Anthony. We also took Maria from the orphanage. Would anyone really believe that Anthony's family separated the children? Surely there's an explanation. Kathy sighed. Let me get started then. Anthony looked at his former housekeeper. Yes, Kathy, I'd like to know why we're here. My aunt has been a midwife all her life. Nina listened attentively to Anthony, and as the story progressed, lowered her head. That's how she knew Adriana was capable of doing strange things. But in order not to tell her that her son had died, the man averted his gaze to the girls, who were sitting on the bench and talking animatedly. When they were side by side, the resemblance was entirely undeniable. Kathy finished, then added it so happened that my aunt's remorse and your meeting coincided. Now I can tell you that the other girl is fine. It's up to you to sue her or not. But she's not going to get a trial anyway. Anthony smiled sadly. Why would he sue her? She made a few people happy, at least for a while. Would the girls have been better off in an orphanage? Kathy stood up. Then I guess I'll be going. No need to go to Aunty's house. I'm sure you two have a lot to talk about. When she left, Anthony felt confused. There was music and voices nearby, and he looked at Nina, confused. What do we do now? Nina didn't have time to answer, because a loud, indignant voice could be heard nearby. Anthony, I've been looking for you. You can't just disappear. You've got the wrong status. Next to the table was Vanessa. At another time, Anthony would have been happy to see her, but not now. Vanessa, hi. I have the day off today, and I thought I'd spend it with my daughter. What's up with you? Vanessa couldn't take her eyes off Nina. Inside, everything was churning. She had been looking for years for a way to get closer to Anthony, as they say, little by little. And here she was planning to spend with her daughter. Vanessa invited the tongue, but it was too late. Anthony's gaze became one. Everything she had worked so hard to build between them crumbled in an instant. Vanessa, are you forgetting? I'm sorry, Anthony, you've got it all wrong. Vanessa hurried out, but when she came down the steps, she froze. There were 2 Daria sitting across from her. True, one was a little thinner and didn't look quite so brazen. The woman turned around. She looked at the couple seated at the Euless table, narrowed her eyes. Well, that got rid of the mayors. She walked briskly down the path, plotting a plan in her head in case things didn't go her way. Daria gave Vanessa a dirty look. Maria immediately asked, Who is that? That's my father's assistant, who sleeps and dreams of moving in with us. Why, he doesn't have a home of his own. Daria laughed. Maria, you're kidding. She wants to be the mayor's wife, that is, my father's wife. Maria even blushed, then burst out laughing. I understand that she doesn't stand a chance. I won't let that happen. Anthony finally looked at Nina. Hi, Nina. Hi, Tony. Nina averted her eyes in embarrassment. This was definitely someone she never thought she'd see again in her life. Then it all came up. Maria, the illness, her husband leaving her. Tony, for her, it was a breath of air, a kind of exercise. But Nina clearly understood that it was before exercise and nothing more. When they were saying goodbye, Anthony asked, "We'll see each other again." Nina then shrugged her shoulders. Why? We both get some rest, relax, and that's it. He nodded. He's right. At home, his wife and daughter were waiting for him. And all in all, frankly speaking, Anthony didn't realize how it had all turned out. It was as if something had hit him over the head, so he decided to forget it all as well. I think we need to figure out what to do next. We can't just leave because our daughters will have too many questions. And it wouldn't be right. They're twins. Nina sighed. They lived in peace. And here they were. She didn't understand how things would go on. How to explain to the girls that, although they were sisters, they would have to live in different cities and with different families. I don't know what's next. Maria is my daughter, and that says it all. Anthony looked somberly at Nina. Daria is my daughter, but that doesn't stop them from being sisters. Nina agreed and nodded. And the man asked Nina, "Where are you staying?" "I haven't been anywhere yet. I'm sure we'll be here for more than a day. Maybe you should come to our house. We have a big house, plenty of room for everyone. It'll give us time to figure out what to do next. This is awkward. What will your wife say? Adriana died a few years ago, so apart from the housekeeper, no one ever goes there." When the girls heard they were going to Doria's house from behind, they jumped up and down and squealed. Wistfully thought again that nothing would happen like before. In the evening, when the girls had settled into Doria's room, Anthony picked up the wine. "Nina, maybe we should have a little drink, so to speak, to take the edge off the nervous system." Nina nodded. They sat by the fireplace and Anthony spoke. "The biggest shock for me was that my wife didn't tell me anything. I lost my son, but I lived and knew nothing about it. I love Daria very much. She is my family. How could someone do this to me? And why? Why didn't she take both girls? For a while we thought we were never going to have children. We went to all kinds of doctors. The last one seemed to be a success. Adriana said when it was done that it was the last time. She said there would be no more attempts. Apparently it was out of desperation. Nina was quiet for a while. When I took Maria, I was told the girl was sick and weak. I agreed to everything. I was going to treat her all her life. My husband was sterile, and so we decided to take the baby." Nina smiled sadly. Actually, it was his idea. It took me a long time to decide. I kept thinking I wouldn't be able to love my baby. As the years went by, I accepted. When I took Maria in my arms, I realized that I was willing to do anything for her. Love at first sight. Anthony looked at her husband. Her husband lived with us for a while when Maria started to grow up. He left. He said he couldn't love her, and that I should choose Maria or him. Anthony gasped. How? How can you put such a choice in front of a person? Nina shrugged. Well, it's like this. I'm going to rest. Too many things today. My head is spinning. Sure, go ahead. Tell him Maria has a heart defect. The doctors promised that with the transition age it should go away. But for now, we're on medication. The next day, Anthony left while everyone slept. Vanessa greeted him with a cold smile. She couldn't contain herself. Next to Anthony, she saw only herself. And here was a complete stranger. Good morning, Vanessa. Give me the details of the best pediatric cardiologist in the world. She closed the door behind her and the maid's mouth dropped open. Is Daria sick? I wish she were. That's just nonsense. Vanessa immediately twitched. What a lot of thoughts were going through her head. She picked up the phone and immediately calmed down. Running errands for her boss was something she was very good at. Nina decided that they would return home in the afternoon. After all, it was possible to agree over the phone. What was there to negotiate? She wasn't going to change anything. Girls, they could be long-distance friends. And she wanted very much to leave because Anthony's presence near her made her not revolt about herself. What nonsense was going through her head? They had no relationship that could be remembered simply by meeting on a physiological level. An inner voice whispered viciously, "A lot of people wanted to meet you on that level. Somehow you turned them all down, but not him." But the plans didn't come to fruition. After lunch, which they had prepared with the girls, Anthony arrived. "Nena, get ready. There's a very good pediatric cardiologist waiting. Let him take a look at Maria." Nina wanted to refuse, but then changed her mind. No need for unnecessary consultations. The doctor insisted on a more thorough examination, and they had to stay a few more days. And later the doctor called them back to his office. "I have nothing to tell them. Most of the time these problems end when the child is in transition. But in very rare cases, probably 1 in 5,000, not the other way around, they get worse." This is how her child's illness progressed. Nina looked at the doctors with confusion, but they told her, "I understand. But if you doubt my competence, ask the attending physician to order tests, not to wait for everything to go away. What do? We have to operate. We can do it here. But you realize that the heart is not the stomach. It's too risky. If you don't operate, you don't have to operate. Maria will not die like in the soap opera. It's just that her lifestyle will be very different from that of her peers. And of course, any nervous shock, too much fatigue, and many other factors could be fatal. We can think." Of course, they left the clinic, and then Anthony spoke. "Nena, it's up to you, of course. But think about it. Such an opportunity to give Mary a chance to live like everyone else, to run. Have fun. I'm everything." Nina wiped away tears. She tried not to think about anything bad. In the evening, she talked with Maria. The girl's eyes lit up immediately. "Mommy, they're going to let me ride the highest carousel. Besides, Daria and I have decided to go climbing." Nina sighed. Her daughter was right. She wants to live a full life. In the morning during breakfast, Anthony was watching the news. Suddenly he froze. Nina froze too. She asked for the weekend for now. The housekeeper said she would at least cook to pay him back for living here. The local news was on TV, and they were showing their girls there. The announcer was broadcasting cheerfully. "It seems our mayor or his wife had a wild youth. It's not clear why we only know of one boy. The answer is simple." Just then, a cardiac clinic appeared on the screen. Where did Maria come from? The announcer's voice reached a climax. It's very simple. The second child is sick, and it seems that the parents have abandoned her. Before the announcer could finish, Anthony's phone rang. Sure enough, it was Stephen. "Anthony, what's going on there?" "Good morning, Stephen. There's nothing wrong." "Do you watch television?" "Of course I do, and I will even prosecute the journalists for defamation. The governor has slowed down a bit. I'll wait for you at my house. As soon as you can leave." Anthony turned off the phone, sighed. "I have to go to the region." "Nina's angry," he said. "God, now you're in trouble because of us." "That's ridiculous. What's that got to do with you?" "It's a shame we can't meet Maria. Who would have thought? What kind of technology? I thought you had to be in the hospital for 6 months after heart surgery." Anthony was glad that Maria was okay, but he was also upset because he realized that there was no longer anything to keep them in this town, which meant they would have to part very soon. Anthony is very used to having 2 Darias at home. He knew the other one was Maria, but they looked very much alike. He got used to late-night conversations in the kitchen with Nina. He had not realized before how interesting Nina was. He had to stay in the region after a conversation with the governor, which, by the way, even brought them closer together. There were other pressing matters. Daria was not worried about Daria. She knew Nina would take care of everything, and she flew home as if on wings. It had been a long time since she had the feeling that a whole family was waiting for her at home. Anthony stopped in front of the door. Family? Yes, of course. Only now did he realize why everyone felt so good in the house. Because they felt like family. That's what it was all about. You don't have to make anything up. You just have to be a family. Nina would make the best wife. He really hoped the woman wouldn't reject him. It's not about her as a hostess and mother, but as a woman. But why did it take her so long to realize it? After all, from the very moment they had seen each other for the second time recently, he had already realized that he didn't want to let her go. And it wasn't even because of Maria. Anthony opened the door. It was unusually quiet in the house, and he entered the room. Daria was sitting quietly on the couch. "Hello, Daria, where is everyone?" Daria looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Dad, they're gone. They've gone all the way home. When we were like this, Dad didn't do anything to make them stay. You could have, I know, because you don't care about anyone or anything but your job." He couldn't find anything to say to his daughter, so he raised his voice. Daria calmed down immediately. Daria wiped her eyes. "That's right, Dad. How else could you hide your misdeed without yelling at the child?" Daria disappeared into her room. Anthony stared in confusion at Daria's door. In the evening, Daria did not come out of her room. Anthony knocked on her door. "Daria, let's have dinner." "Thanks, Dad. I don't want to." Neither did he. "Let's eat." Anthony had never thought he would be so lonely without Nina and Maria. He hardly slept at night. He wondered what Nina was doing now. Would she remember him? Daria went out for a quiet breakfast. Anthony couldn't help himself. "Daria, have you called Maria? How are they doing?" "She's doing well." "Dad?" Daria, yes, she had tea and got up before nightfall. "Daria, Dad." The daughter's gone. Anthony felt like he was to blame for her. And not just her, but everyone. He pounded his fist on the table. "After all, I'm a grown man and I can afford to do whatever I want." He caught up with Daria already at the school gate, stopping beside her. His daughter looked at him in surprise. "Something happened at Dad's house. Are you okay?" "Yes, but not today." "It in the car." "Why? Where are we going?" "We're going to Nina and Maria's." Daria stared at him for a few seconds, then got into the car and hugged her father. "Dad, this is the right thing to do." Nina prepared the tea, put the cookies on the table. "Maria, the tea is ready." The daughter went into the kitchen and sat down on the sofa. "Mom, I really don't want tea." "Maria, you have to eat well, and now you don't eat anything." Maria picked up the cup and took a sip. "Mom, when do you think Daria and I will see each other again?" Nina was confused. She wasn't ready to answer those questions now because her soul was bleeding. "I don't know, my child. There are some circumstances. These circumstances are you and Anthony." Nina was embarrassed. "No, of course not. It's just that life is a very complicated thing." "Mom, life is complicated, of course. But I think adults like to complicate things even when they're simple. We saw that something was going on between you, and you pretended it wasn't so." Nina stroked Maria's head. "Daughter, when you grow up, you will understand. Anthony is the mayor. He's in the public eye. He's a different kind of person, if you can call him that. His family is on TV a lot. You and I are so different. Such different people, anyway. There can't be anything in common." "Mom, that's not right. It's people that matter, not where they work." Nina didn't have time to answer because the doorbell rang. "Mom, I'll get it." Nina nodded. She got up and looked out the window. How strange. They had the same car as Anthony's in their yard. She hadn't seen it before. Maybe it's not our head. Oh, those chimeras. "Hello, Nina." The woman shuddered. Slowly, she turned around. Anthony was standing next to her. "Nina, I couldn't follow you. Marry me. We'll have 2 daughters and the happiest life in the world." Nina couldn't say anything. She looked at Anthony and tears ran down her cheeks. Then he held her tightly against him. "That's it. Say no more. 2 hours to pack. We'll figure out the rest later." Vanessa dialed Anthony's number for the umpteenth time. She hated it when the mayor was out of sight. Of course, she had no right to control him, but every time he disappeared for even an hour, she thought it was from another woman who could pose a danger to her Vanessa. Finally, Anthony picked up the phone. For a few seconds, Vanessa heard rustling sounds. Then Anthony finally said hello. "Vanessa, is something wrong?" "No, but I need to know where you are." "What if something is wrong?" Vanessa listened clearly to every sound coming through the phone. "I'm in the city, Vanessa. I'm at the door of the registry office." Apparently, Vanessa's voice changed because Anthony was quick to say, "Vanessa, of course, you'll be the guest of honor at my wedding." Vanessa threw the phone on the floor. She was on the verge of tears. She had been preparing for many years for Anthony to take her to the registry office. 2 months later, the governor himself visited her town. The occasion was important. The mayor of the city was getting married. The occasion was grand. And when Anthony told Stephen that he and Nina didn't want a lavish celebration, Stephen was outraged. And there's more. It's not every day a mayor gets married, much less a good mayor. Nina was. Anthony looked at her with a kind of mute astonishment. He had seen before that Nina was beautiful, but now he realized that he had never met a prettier woman. Next to them were Maria and Daria. They wore the same lush dresses, and people whispered. No one could understand how people who were about to get married could have girls who looked like 2 peas in a pod. I now pronounce you man and wife. The words sounded so solemn that even Vanessa could barely hold back tears and immediately held out a handkerchief. Deputy Mayor Vanessa looked at him in surprise. She had only recently come to work for them. And if Vanessa wasn't mistaken, he was single. She smiled. Thank you so much. You are so kind. You have to be so happy for strangers. Vanessa smiled in satisfaction. It can't be. Can strangers be strangers working together? The man reached out for her elbow, and Vanessa didn't hesitate to put her hand on his. There must have been so much happiness in Anthony's new family that there was enough for everyone around them.